There comes a moment in life when the room changes the instant you walk in. Not because you're louder, not because you demand attention, but because your energy is no longer available for misuse. Something in you has shifted, and the people who once benefited from the old version of you, they can feel it deeply. They're feeling the loss of you, not because you disappeared, but because you finally arrived as yourself. You see, for a long time, you may have been the one who overgave, overexplained, overextended. You were present even when you were tired. You showed up even when you weren't chosen. You stayed silent to keep the peace, even when it cost you your truth. And the world got comfortable with that version of you. But growth has a way of disrupting comfort. Now, you pause before responding. You choose where your energy goes. You no longer chase validation, approval, or love that requires you to shrink. And that is unsettling to people who were used to having unlimited access to you. They feel the loss because you no longer rescue them from their own responsibilities. They feel the loss because you no longer explain yourself to be understood. They feel the loss because you stopped betraying yourself to keep them comfortable. Something's different in you. You don't argue like you used to. You don't beg to be heard. You don't stay where you're not respected. And that difference, that's called self-worth. Let me tell you this, when you change, not everyone will celebrate it. Some will grieve the version of you that made their life easier. Some will feel threatened by your boundaries. Some will call you distant, cold, or selfish, simply because you learned how to protect your peace. But hear this clearly. You are not responsible for how people feel when you stop over giving. Your evolution will expose who loved you for you and who loved you for what you provided. And that revelation can be uncomfortable, even is also freeing. But it is now you are no longer leaking energy into places that never poured back into you. You see, when you stop explaining, stop proving, stop fixing, people have to face themselves. And not everyone is ready for that mirror. That's why they feel your absence, even when you're standing right there. They're feeling the loss of the old you. But you're gaining the truest version of yourself. And that is not something to apologize for. That is something to honor. There is a silent transformation that happens when you begin to grow. And it does not announce itself with noise or drama. It happens inward first. Your thoughts change, your reactions soften, your tolerance for what once drained you begins to disappear. You may not even realize it at the beginning, but the way you show up in the world starts to feel different. And long before you explain it, others sense it. That is because growth always changes your energy. When you were operating from your old self, your energy was predictable. You responded quickly. You gave freely. You absorbed other people's emotions without question. And you carried responsibilities that were never truly yours. People knew what to expect from you. They relied on your availability, your patience, your willingness to fix, to comfort, to compromise. That version of you made life easier for many, even when it made life heavier for you. But growth introduces pause. Now you think before you speak. You feel before you react. You listen to your inner voice instead of ignoring it to keep others comfortable. This shift may look small on the outside, but energetically it is powerful. Your presence becomes calmer, more grounded, more intentional. You are no longer everywhere at once. You are where you choose to be. And that is why people feel it. Energy does not lie. It speaks even when you say nothing. When your energy changes, conversations change, dynamics shift. The unspoken rules of relationships begin to break. People who are used to your immediate yes now notice your thoughtful silence. People who leaned on emotional labor now feel the weight of standing on their own. This is often when confusion arises. Some may say, "You've changed," and they are right, but what they often mean is, "You are no longer giving me what you used to." Growth makes you less reactive and more reflective. It makes you less accessible to chaos and more aligned with peace. And for those who thrived on your old patterns, this feels like loss. What they are sensing is not distance, it is discernment. You are no longer pouring energy into conversations that go nowhere. You are no longer explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You are no longer chasing connection at the cost of self-respect. Your energy has become selective, and selectivity can feel like rejection to those who were used to unlimited access. But this is not arrogance. This is awareness. Growth teaches you that your energy is sacred. Where you place it determines how you feel, how you heal, and how you evolve. You begin to understand that exhaustion is not a badge of honor and overgiving is not love. You realize that peace requires protection, and that protection starts with how you manage your emotional and mental energy. As you grow, you stop reacting to everything that invites you. You learn that not every message needs a reply. Not every conflict deserves your presence, and not every relationship is meant to continue in the same way. Your energy becomes quieter, but stronger, softer, but unshakable. And here's the truth many struggle to accept true. When you grow, some people will feel uncomfortable around you because your energy no longer matches their expectations. Your calm may trigger their chaos. Your boundaries may challenge their habits. Your silence may force them to confront what they avoided when you were doing the emotional work for them. This does not mean you are wrong. It means you are evolving. Growth changes your energy so you can finally hear yourself. So you can finally choose yourself. So you can finally live from a place of truth instead of obligation. And anyone who truly cares for you will not mourn the loss of the old you. They will respect the arrival of the new you. Because growth is not about becoming less. It is about becoming more of who you were always meant to be. Boundaries are often misunderstood. Many people believe boundaries are walls built to keep others out, but in truth, boundaries are lines drawn to keep you intact. They are not about punishment, control, or rejection. They are about clarity. And yet, the moment you begin to set them, discomfort arises. Not always within you, but within the people who were accustomed to crossing them. For a long time, you may have lived without clear boundaries. You answered every call, explained every decision, forgave without accountability, and tolerated behavior that slowly eroded your peace. Not because you were weak, but because you were kind, hopeful, and deeply invested in connection. You believed that understanding others meant abandoning parts of yourself, and people learned this version of you well. Then something changed. You began to listen to the quiet signals inside you, the exhaustion, the resentment, the feeling of being taken for granted. You realized that love without limits turns into self-betrayal. And so, you started doing something unfamiliar. You said no without guilt. You took space without apology. You stopped over-explaining your choices. This is where the discomfort began. Boundaries disrupt patterns. When you change the rules of access to you, people who benefited from the old rules feel unsettled. They may not understand why your availability has decreased or why your tolerance has disappeared. To them, it feels sudden, even personal. But for you, it has been a long time coming. Discomfort arises because boundaries force accountability. When you no longer absorb someone else's emotional mess, they have to face it themselves. When you stop fixing, rescuing, and smoothing things over, others are left with their own responsibility. And not everyone is ready for that. It is easier to label you as distant or difficult than to examine how much they relied on your lack of boundaries. This is why some people resist your growth. They may test your limits, push back, or question your intentions. They might say you've changed, that you're selfish, that you're no longer the same. But what they are truly reacting to is the loss of access. They are uncomfortable because your boundaries remind them that you are not obligated to give endlessly. Here is the hard truth. Boundaries will disappoint people who were depending on your self-neglect. And that disappointment does not mean you are doing something wrong. It means you are doing something necessary. Boundaries also create internal discomfort at first. You may feel guilt when you say no. You may feel uneasy choosing rest over responsibility or silence over explanation. This is because you are unlearning years of conditioning that taught you your worth came from how much you gave. Growth asks you to sit with that discomfort and trust that honoring yourself is not cruelty. Over time, boundaries bring clarity. They show you who respects you and who only valued your availability. They reveal which relationships can grow with you and which were only sustained by your overextension. Boundaries do not destroy healthy connections, they strengthen them. The relationships meant to last will adapt. The ones that were never built on mutual respect. Boundaries also protect your energy. They give you space to breathe, to think, to heal. They allow you to show up fully instead of depleted. When you are no longer constantly defending your time and emotions, you begin to feel grounded. Your presence becomes intentional, not obligatory. And yes, some people will feel uncomfortable around the new you. Your calm will feel unfamiliar. Your silence will feel loud. Your refusal to engage in old patterns will feel like rejection. But remember, this discomfort is often the first sign of change. You are not responsible for making others comfortable at the expense of your well-being. You are responsible for honoring the life you are building. Boundaries are not a sign of distance. They are a sign of self-respect. And when you choose self-respect, you choose a life that is no longer driven by fear of losing others, but by the courage to finally keep yourself. When people think of loss, they often imagine absence. Someone leaving, a door closing, a chapter ending in a visible way. But some of the most powerful losses are invisible. They happen while everyone is still in the room, still talking, still connected on the surface. Loss is not always about distance. Sometimes it is about access. And when you change, people can feel your absence even when you are standing right in front of them. This kind of loss begins the moment you stop showing up as the version of yourself that once made others comfortable. You may still care, still listen, still be present, but you are no longer available in the same way. Your energy is no longer open to being drained. Your emotions are no longer offered without discernment. And that subtle shift is deeply felt. People feel the loss when you stop over-explaining. There was a time when you felt the need to justify every decision, soften every boundary, and make sure no one misunderstood your intentions. You carry the weight of being understood. Now, you allow your actions to speak for you. You trust that those who truly see you, you do not need constant explanation. This change feels like loss to those who relied on your explanations to maintain control or comfort. They feel the loss when you stop reacting. You no longer engage in every argument. You no longer respond to provocation. You choose peace over proving a point. This silence is not emptiness, it is strength. But to someone who was used to your emotional reactions, it feels like something has been taken away. They feel the loss when you stop rescuing. For a long time, you may have been the one who fixed problems, soothed emotions, and carried burdens that were never yours. You stepped in before others had to feel discomfort. When you step back, people are forced to face what they avoided. And instead of recognizing your growth, they may interpret it as abandonment. But here is the truth: you did not leave, you evolved. Loss without absence is confronting because it reveals dependence. It shows who relied on your emotional labor to feel stable. When that support is no longer freely given, the space feels unfamiliar, even painful. And rather than reflecting inward, some project that pain outward onto you. This kind of loss is often misunderstood. People may accuse you of being cold, distant, or changed. They may say you are no longer the same person. And they are right, you are not. You are no longer the version of yourself that sacrificed peace to maintain connection. You are no longer willing to disappear so others can feel whole. What they are mourning is not you, but the role you played. A role where you were always available. A role where your needs came last. A role where your silence kept harmony and your exhaustion went unnoticed. When you step out of that role, the imbalance becomes visible, and imbalance feels like loss to those who benefited from it. This loss is a necessary part of growth. You cannot evolve without changing the way you show up. You cannot heal without removing yourself from patterns that harmed you, and you cannot become whole while remaining accessible to everything that once drained you. Loss in this sense is not failure, it is transformation. And here is the quiet power in this kind of loss. It teaches you that presence does not mean availability. You can be loving without being limitless. You can care without carrying. You can stay connected without self-abandonment. When people feel your absence while you are still present, it is a sign that you have reclaimed something important. Your energy, your voice, your boundaries. You are no longer performing closeness at the cost of authenticity. Loss isn't always physical. Sometimes it is the loss of control over you. Sometimes it is the loss of the version of you that made everything easier for everyone else. And that kind of loss, no matter how uncomfortable, is often the clearest evidence that you are finally choosing yourself. The moment you truly recognize your self-worth, everything around you begins to rearrange itself. Not loudly, not all at once, but steadily and unmistakably. Self-worth is not confidence that demands attention. It is quiet knowing. It is the deep understanding that you do not have to earn your place in anyone's life by over-forgiving, over-explaining, or overextending yourself. And when this understanding takes root, relationships cannot remain the same. For a long time, your relationships may have been built on effort imbalance. You gave more time, more empathy, more patience. You adjusted yourself to fit into spaces that did not fully honor you. You stayed longer than you should have, hoping that if you gave enough, things would eventually change. This was not because you lacked value, but because you were disconnected from it. When self-worth is unclear, love often becomes something you prove instead of something you receive. Then awareness arrives. You begin to notice how certain interactions leave you drained. You start to question why your needs feel secondary. You realize that love should not feel like constant work without nourishment. This is the beginning of self-worth, and it is powerful enough to rewrite every connection in your life. When you value yourself, you stop negotiating your boundaries. You no longer accept disrespect disguised as honesty. You no longer tolerate inconsistency dressed up as confusion. You no longer settle for crumbs because you remember you deserve the whole table. This shift can be uncomfortable for others because the rules of engagement have changed. The version of you that accepted less no longer exists. Self-worth redefines what you allow. You become more selective with your time, your energy, and your emotional availability. You ask yourself how you feel in the presence of someone, not how much they need you. You choose relationships that feel safe, reciprocal, and aligned. And when something no longer meets those standards, you do not force it to stay. This is where some relationships begin to fall away. Not because you stopped caring, but because the relationship was sustained by your self-sacrifice. When you stop over-functioning, the imbalance becomes visible. Some people will rise to meet you with respect and growth. Others will resist, criticize, or drift away. This is not loss, it is alignment. Self-worth also changes how you communicate. You speak more honestly. You listen to your intuition. You no longer soften your truth to avoid discomfort. You understand that being liked is not the same as being respected. And you choose respect, starting with how you treat yourself. Your words carry clarity instead of fear, intention instead of obligation. And here is the most important shift you stop chasing. You may mourn relationships that cannot follow you forward. You may feel guilt for needing more space, more honesty, more respect. You may wish things could stay the same while you grow. But growth does not work that way. When you rise, the landscape changes. And that is not cruelty, it is nature. Those who are meant to grow with you will adapt. They will ask questions, respect your boundaries, and learn the new language of who you are becoming. They will not demand that you shrink to make them feel secure. They will celebrate your becoming even when it challenges them. Others will not. And that is painful, but it is also revealing. It shows you which connections were rooted in mutual respect and which were rooted in convenience. Letting go of those dynamics is not abandonment. It is alignment. Your evolution is a declaration. It says, I choose honesty over familiarity. I choose growth over stagnation. I choose myself without abandoning my compassion. You can still be kind, still be loving, still care deeply, while no longer being available for what diminishes you. You are allowed to outgrow people, places, and patterns. You are allowed to become someone new. You are allowed to protect your peace without explaining it to everyone. Your evolution is not a betrayal of who you were or who others expected you to be. It is the most faithful commitment you can make to the life you are meant to live. And that commitment, no matter how misunderstood, is always worth honoring. What they are feeling is not your absence, it is your awakening. You did not disappear, you did not turn cold, and you did not stop caring. You simply stopped abandoning yourself. And that shift changes everything. When you grow, when you set boundaries, when you choose self-worth, and when you allow yourself to evolve, the world around you must adjust. Some will celebrate the new you. Some will feel confused by it. And some will feel the loss of the version of you that made their lives easier. But none of that means you are wrong. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to protect your energy. You are allowed to become more than what others are used to. Growth will always cost you something, but what it gives back is far greater. It gives you peace instead of constant struggle. It gives you clarity instead of confusion. It gives you relationships built on respect, not obligation. Let them feel the loss of the old you, because you are gaining something priceless, yourself. And the people who truly belong in your life will not ask you to return to who you were. They will walk with you into who you are becoming. This is not the end of connection. This is the beginning of alignment.